Hi, this is a short video on solving two-step equations without parentheses. So, if you're looking at this and I have it still on Google Forms, either Google Forms or Edulastic, you're going to use scratch paper to write these equations down and do the steps to find the variable, okay? And if you're doing it on Google Forms, all you're going to need to enter is the number answer, not x equals, just the number. All right, so let's see what we have here. I'm going to go ahead and put it on a view that's better for us to see. There we go. All right, here's our first equation. So let's get started. We have 2 times x plus 1 equals 5. So remember, the whole process here is to get the letter or variable by itself on one side of the equal sign and all the numbers on the other and signs. Now, all that means is we're going to do the opposite math of what we see. When there's no parentheses, the first thing we always have to move is the number without a letter. So the opposite of plus 1 is negative 1 or minus 1. And when we do that, that gives us 0 on this side. We're left with 2x's equals 4. That means multiply when a number is in front of a variable or parentheses, and the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. And that gives us the answer of x equals 2. And that is all you'd need to answer if it's on Google Forms. So that is how we do that. Let's go look at another one. Now, none of these at the beginning have signs, or if they do, they're relatively easy until we get further down. So, number 2, 2 times x plus 5 equals 13. Again, we need to get that x by itself on one side of the equal and all the number and signs on the other. Our first step when we have two-step equations without parentheses is always to move the number without a letter. So the opposite of plus 5 is negative 5. That gives us 0 on this side. We still have 2 times x. And here we have 8. The opposite of multiply is divide. So we're going to divide by 2, and that leaves us with x equals 4. And that would be all you'd need to put in if that's a Google form. All right. If you need to pause in between these for slow down, please do so. I'm just trying to do this at a pretty good rate. All right, let's go down to number 3. On number 3, we have 3x minus 4 equals 5. All right, again, trying to get that x by itself. We always move the number without a letter first when there's no parentheses. The opposite of subtracting 4 or a negative 4 is plus 4. We're going to do that to both sides to keep it equal and balanced. Gives us 0 on this side, leaving us with 3x's equals 9. And that 3 in front of the x means multiply. The opposite of multiply is divide. And we're going to do that to both sides. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. That leaves us with 1x, or just x, equals 9 divided by 3. And so we will end up typing in our answer. Now, I'm going to leave the next one for you to do because I feel like you could probably do it on your own after watching this. Now, I'm going to go down to the first one with signs. Number 6, we have negative x plus 5 equals 1. Now, I want to remind you, when you have a variable that's by itself, there's always a 1 in front of it. So that really means there's a negative 1 in front of that. All right. Remember, our first step is to move the number without a letter. So the opposite of plus 5 or a positive 5 is a negative 5 or minus 5 to both sides of the equation. When we do this, we have 1 plus negative 5. Remember, we always think of this as addition on this side with signs. We can't add, we have different signs, so we do 5 minus 4. 5 minus 1, which gives us 4. We have more negatives than positives, so that's a negative 4. That's 0, and we still have negative 1x. Our last step to get rid of that negative sign that's with the variable, since we have a negative 1 in front of it, will be to divide both sides by negative 1. And this gives me x equals 2 negatives in multiplication division gives me a positive 4. And that is our answer. Now, I did teach you a trick way of doing that earlier, and I will go over that. We did it exactly the same as earlier. We subtracted 5 or did negative 5 to both sides. We still got negative 4, but we had negative x. And what you can remember if you don't want to go to the steps of dividing by negative 1 is that you change the sign to the opposite on this side and the opposite on this side, because that's the same as dividing by negative 1. All right, let's go to our next problem. We have negative 3 times x plus 2 equals 11. Again, we want to get the x by itself. The opposite of adding 2 or a positive 2 is a negative 2. That cancels out, giving us 0. And we have negative 3 times x equals 9. That's 11 plus negative 2. Different signs. We subtract. We have more positives. So we have a positive 9 on that side. The opposite of multiply is divide by negative 3. We always bring our negatives with us when we multiply and divide. On this side, that gives us 1x or x. And on this side, we have 1 negative. And when we're multiplying or dividing, 1 negative gives us a negative answer. And we have negative 3. So the answer to that would be negative 3. If you need to pause, please do so. I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen in 2, 1, 0. All right, let's move down to the next problem, number 8. We have 4x plus 3 equals a negative 5. Again, the whole thing about solving two-step equations is to get the x on one side all by itself and all the number and signs on the other. We do this doing the opposite math. And we always start, if there's no parentheses, with the number without a letter. Okay? The opposite of plus 3 is negative 3. So I'm going to do that to both sides. That gives me 0 on this side and leaves me there with 4 x's. On this side, remember, it's always addition with signs. That's negative 5 plus negative 3. Same sign, we keep the sign, we add the numbers up. Now we're left with 4 times x equals negative 8. The opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. That gives us 1x, or just x. On this side, let's count our negatives before we divide. We've got 1 negative. That means a negative answer. And we get negative 2 when we divide those. So our answer would be negative 2. Make sure you're counting your signs in your division problem before you do it in your head. All right, I'm going to clear in 2, 1, clear. All right, Now we have number 9. That is 5x's minus 7. Oops, minus 2. Oops. Well, let me go back and erase that. Well, I sure don't want to erase, so let's go to the pen and we'll just clear the screen. Well, now it doesn't want to work. How nice is that? Clear the screen. Well, we'll do it over here. It's being kind of a Heidi. I'm not sure why. We'll make that a 2. There we go. 5x minus 2 equals negative 7. Don't know why that wouldn't clear, but whatever. Okay, so I'm going to do it over here too because that way you can see my writing. All right, so our first step is going to be to move the number without a letter. The opposite of negative 2 is a positive 2 to both sides. That gives me 0 on that side. That leaves me with 5 times x equals, I can't add those. I have different signs. Remember, we cannot add different signs. They go different directions. So we're going to subtract 7 minus 2 gives us 5. We have more negatives than positives. That line's longer, so it's a negative 5. Now, the opposite of multiply by 5 is divide by 5. On this side, that cancels this out, giving us 1x or just x. On this side, we've got one negative, so that's going to give us a negative. And 5 divided by 5 is a negative 1. So our answer here is negative 1. And I'm going to clear the screen, but I have no idea if that'll clear over there, so we're going to ignore it if it doesn't. All right, clear the screen. And no, it's not clearing, so we're going to ignore it. All right, so we're going to go down to this last problem we have, which is 3 times x minus 2 equals negative 8. All right, our first step is going to be to move the number without a letter, and the opposite of a negative 2 is a positive 2. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other to keep it balanced. That cancels out, giving me 0. I still have 3 x's. And that equals, I have a negative plus a positive. I cannot add them. Different directions on the number line. So we subtract 8 minus 2. We get 6. Then we look to see if do we have more positives or more negatives. More negatives. The opposite of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. That cancels out on this side, leaving me with 1x or just x. On this side, count your signs first. We have one negative. So our answer is going to be negative and then 6 divided by 3. And I'm not going to finish that for you because I know you can do it. All right. I hope this helped. Keep practicing. The only way to get better at equations is to work them and work them out. All the steps. All right. And if you're going to go on to the next video, I'll see you with parentheses.